What we're looking at here is a small hairline crack in the concrete curb, not in the walkway, not in the concrete walkway, but there is a small crack in the concrete curb, and it's right next to the control joint in the sidewalk. So we have a crack. There's about 2 inches difference space between the crack and the crack in the concrete curb and the control joint. And what I'm suggesting is maybe we could line these joints up with a control joint. I mean, here we have a control joint in the curb. And of course, you can see it's offset. It's about 2 inches away from the control joint in the walkway. And here's what I'm suggesting. I'm suggesting that the control joints in the curb line up with the control joints that were cut into the sidewalk. And I really don't think this would have been hard to do with a little planning, you know, if you think about it. And who knows, maybe they did. Maybe they did plan and they messed this one up. It got off a little bit. Stuff like that does happen. I also think it might have been better to actually have a few more control joints in the curb, you know. That way you would have reduced the chances of the concrete curb cracking. You know, the reason why you put control joints in concrete is to basically have anything that is going to crack in those control joints. That way you're not going to see a big crack running through the finished concrete. You know, it's going to look like it's going to be hidden in the crack somewhere. They're not going to be as noticeable. So the minute you cut a control joint into something, you're basically weakening it. You're kind of hoping that, hey, this is a good spot to crack, not 2 inches or 5 inches from here. Crack here. That's basically what you're saying, and that's what they're doing. But I'm just suggesting that you could line them up. It'd be nice, aesthetically pleasing look. Architecturally, it would look nice. But at the same time, if you have a sidewalk crack and it somehow affects the curb, or you have a curb crack and it somehow affects the sidewalk, I guess what I'm trying to say is that I've seen concrete crack in a variety of different directions when these control joints are offset or they aren't even close. But when I see these control joints lining up, then they seem to crack along the same lines. So if the sidewalk cracks, the curb will crack right there. And a lot of times what causes a concrete crack, you know, soil erosion, compaction, you know, soil settling, moisture, expansion and contraction of the concrete itself. What actually causes the cracks will put pressure on other parts. So if there's pressure on the sidewalk, let's say it's expanding, it's going to put pressure on the curbs. And if this is expanding and contracting on a regular basis, it's not hard to figure out where you can get a crack. And if the sidewalk cracks, but it's putting pressure on the curb, it's going to want to crack along the same lines. And that's realistically all I'm saying with this video. If we can line up our control joints, I think we're going to be better off than if we offset them. And to me, even with something like this, I would have liked to have seen a control joint, let's just say every 4 squares in the concrete curb. So you would have just had a control joint wrapping around, would have lined up with the control joints in the sidewalk. You would have had them probably, I would imagine that would have been about 6 feet, maybe 8 feet, something like that. And again, you could have always done them every 3 squares. You know, the smaller the area or the more control joints you put into a concrete slab, the less likely you are to have a wild crack running along the finished concrete surface. You know, it's going to want to crack along the control joint lines. That's the reason why they're put in most of the time. Of course, this sidewalk looks like it was actually an architectural design. But hey, use the architectural design to your advantage and line these control joints up. I think you're going to be better off and happier in the long run when you reduce the amount of hairline cracks. And don't forget, hairline cracks can turn into bigger cracks. So if you have, and don't forget, expansion joints can turn into larger cracks also. You know, let's not forget about that.